Hi readers, me here, Lee. Welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads, and welcome to Book Talk Tuesday. I am recording this way sooner than I normally would. It's Labor Day when I'm recording this, and normally I do it on the weekend prior to the post, but I just finished a book that was so hard for me and so draining and so much work that it left me exhausted and kind of bummed out on reading. So I thought I need to do something that makes me happy, and what makes me happy is talking about books. I am a paid subscriber to Mother Horror's Patreon. If you don't know who she is, you can look up on Instagram, Mother Horror. She talks almost exclusively about horror books and recommends horror books. One of the things that she's doing with some of her subscribers is asking them for a link to their Goodreads and then making horror recommendations based on some questions that she asks them. So I've been watching those and looking and trying not to buy any books off the list that she suggests for them. But I did think it was a good opportunity to take some of these questions and think about what I like in horror, or in any genre actually, because some of these things can apply to multiple genres. Sorry, got an itch. So I made a list of the tropes I think I love, which I might need to change based on what I'm going to talk to you about, the subgenres I like, and then the top 10 defining horror novels. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. My top 10 defining horror novels. One or two of these may be considered horror adjacent, but I included them because even though they might not be horror, there's an element there. So, number 1, and I will tell you about this book all day long because it is one of my favorites. I still remember it, and that is Philip Fracassi's A Child Alone with Strangers. If you have not read this book, I highly recommend it. This is monster horror, but in true fashion, the horror is really people. This book, the main character, Henry, is 9 years old. I should add a trigger warning here. If children being in harm's way bothers you, think twice, but I don't have a problem with that. In fiction, in real life, I have a problem with it. But Henry Thorne grabbed hold of my heart from the first chapter and never let go. And I have this book and another copy of it that I purchased, a special edition, in a place of honor in my house. I love it so much. When 9-year-old Henry Thorne miraculously survives an accident that claims his father's life, he finds himself changed. Upon waking from a coma, he can now read people's thoughts, see their feelings. While Henry recuperates and grapples with his newfound abilities, his family is compensated a small fortune by those responsible for the accident. The highly publicized case catches the eye of lifelong criminal Jim Cady, who hatches a plan to kidnap Henry for ransom. When Jim's plan goes into motion, Henry is taken, hidden in an abandoned farmhouse surrounded by miles of forest, while Jim and his crew wait for the drop. But upon arrival, Henry's abilities alert him to something surprising and horrible. They are not alone. Henry connects with a strange force living in the woods and uses that bond to wreak havoc against his captors. Unknown to Henry, however, is that the ancient being has its own reasons for wanting the interlopers gone. There is something hidden beneath the house, tucked away in a dark, damp root cellar, waiting for its return. I get almost emotional thinking about this book. This is monster horror maybe, but it's also got a little bit of paranormal, Henry's abilities, and I absolutely loved it. Philip has written some other great books, Boys in the Valley, which I actually got him to sign at a book signing last year, I think, and Gothic. both really good. But this one just spoke to me, and I loved it, and I think about it still on the regular. Highly recommend it. Like I said, Henry stole my heart and never let it go. I talked about the horror being people in here. Number 2 on my list is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. This is what I would call real horror. Well, while the main character can see ghosts, it's not the ghosts that are the true threat. So this is kind of, I talked about this somewhere, this is based on a real facility in Florida that no longer exists, but this is fiction. Gracetown, Florida, June 1950. 12-year-old Robbie Stevens Jr. is sentenced to 6 months at the Gracetown School for Boys for kicking the son of the largest landowner in town in defense of his older sister, Gloria. So begins Robbie's journey further into the terrors of Jim Crow South and the very real horror of the school they call the Reformatory. Robbie has a talent for seeing ghosts, or haints. But what was once a comfort to him after the loss of his mother has become a window into the truth of what happens at the Reformatory. Boys forced to work to remediate their so-called crimes have gone missing, but the haints Robbie sees hint at worse things. Through his friends Redbone and Blue, Robbie is learning not just the rules, but how to survive. Meanwhile, Gloria is rallying every family member and connection in Florida to find a way to get Robbie out before it's too late. I have said this before. I have not found any time recently a horror book that has scared me. The Reformatory didn't scare me either. However, I felt so anxious throughout this book. I was practically holding my breath toward the end. Apparently maybe. Both of these things have in common children in harm's way. So, what does that say about me? I can't recommend The Reformatory enough. This is an absolute gem of a novel. I love it. I don't know. I read this before I started my YouTube channel, I believe. So I don't think I've done a review on it. And at this point, I've got so many more books, but I highly recommend The Reformatory. Little bit of ghosts, a lot of suspense, and I would be remiss not to talk about Gloria also. Gloria is really the hero of the book, in my opinion, just for her efforts to try to get her brother out of the Reformatory. Next up is one that people either seem to love it or hate it, but I loved it. And I'll tell you why. I don't know why my books are sticking together. That is Grady Hendrix's How to Sell a Haunted House. I really liked a number of his books. This one gets a little bit fantastical at some point. But there is a part in the beginning when the main character and her brother are at their parents' house. I'll read the summary here in a second. And the movers are there, and the main character and her brother get into it and like tie up on the front yard right in front of the movers. And I bumped the table. From that moment on, this book had me hooked, regardless of how fantastic it got, because I was like, that sounds like something me and my sister would have done at one point in time. When Louise finds out that her parents have died, she dreads going home. She doesn't want to leave her daughter with her ex and fly to Charleston. She doesn't want to deal with her family home, stuffed to the rafters with the remnants of her father's academic career and her mother's lifelong obsession with puppets and dolls. She doesn't want to learn how to live without the two people who knew and loved her best in the world. Most of all, she doesn't want to deal with her brother, Mark, who never left their hometown, gets fired from one job after another, and resents her success. Unfortunately, she'll need his help to get the house ready for sale, because it'll take more than some new paint on the walls and clearing out a lifetime of memories to get this place on the market. But some houses don't want to be sold, and Louise and Mark's home has other plans for both of them. I had a great time with this book. It made me laugh out loud, and it actually touched my heart. There's a child in danger at some point in this book, too. So this would be what I call supernatural horror, kind of supernatural, paranormal, a little bit ghosty, but a rollicking good time in my opinion. One of my absolute... There's another child in danger. One of my absolute favorite things in any genre is the unreliable narrator. And the next book is a YA pick that I think about, again, to this day. And that is Monday's Not Coming by TIffany D. Jackson. I'm trying to read this won the Coretta Scott King Award for nonviolent social change. Okay. Monday Charles is missing, and only Claudia seems to notice. Got to put the readers on. Claudia and Monday have always been inseparable, more sisters than friends. I believe this was based on a real case, actually. So when Monday doesn't turn up for the first day of school, Claudia starts to worry. When she doesn't show for the second day or the second week, Claudia knows that something is wrong. Monday just wouldn't leave her to endure tests and bullies alone. With her grades on the line, Claudia needs her best and only friend now more than ever. But Monday's mother refuses to give Claudia a straight answer, and Monday's sister, April, is even less help. As Claudia digs deeper into her friend's disappearance, she discovers that no one seems to remember the last time they saw Monday. How can a teenage girl just vanish without anyone noticing that she's gone? God, I loved this book. I loved it. I'm trying to find some notes on it. At some point, I realized that I'm not being told something. And I'm asking questions throughout the book. And then I realize what's really going on. The author reveals what's really going on, and my mind was blown. Whether you like YA or not, this to me is also, in addition to apparently I like books with children in danger, this is also real horror, like real, true to life horror. It's nothing supernatural. It is heartbreaking. And whether or not you like YA or not, this is a YA book that transcends genre or age group. I believe they've tried to ban this. It's not banned in Utah, but probably Florida, because they don't like what it says, and it really talks about society and poverty and trying to just make it, and trauma to children. Highly recommend that. So book number... So this is one one of the ones I said was probably horror adjacent or may not be categorized as horror. They don't have in here how they categorize it. I found it, I added it because it is truly a defining novel for me. Next up is, again, maybe horror adjacent. I'm not sure how to define it. It is bleak and dark. read a book that was so fucked up, you had to share it to somebody so that they could see how fucked up it was in the very best way. That is this book, Hawk Mountain by Connor Habib. When I first put it down, I was like, I didn't like that. And then I went back and reread the ending, and I was like, I love this book so much. And then I recommended it to a friend at work, and she liked it too. So I feel vindicated. There was a point in this book where... did I take out... I might have taken out the sticky... Oh no, I didn't. I just wrote, holy ... what the fuck just happened? Because I did not see that coming. I recommend this book. An English teacher is gaslit by his charismatic high school bully in this tense story of deception, manipulation, and murder. Single father Ted is relaxing at the beach with his son Anthony when he catches sight of a man approaching from the water's edge. As the man draws closer, Todd recognizes him as Jack, who bullied Todd relentlessly in their teenage years, but now seems overjoyed to have run into his old friend. Jack suggests a meal to catch up, and can he spend the night? What follows is a fast-paced story of obsession and cunning. As Jack invades Todd's life, pain and intimidation from the past unearth knife-edge suspense in the present. Set in a small town on the New England coast, Connor Habib's debut introduces characters trapped in isolation by the expansive woods and the encroaching ocean. Their violence, an expression of desire, repressed desire, and the damage it can inflict. Both gruesome and tender, Hawk Mountain offers a compelling look at how love and hate are indissoluble, intertwined until the last breath. Like, if you want to read something that is completely fucked up, I loved this book. I loved it. This is probably when I kind of, I don't know, when I kind of wanted to read more literary fiction, even though I don't know if this counts as literary fiction or horror. Interesting. So, kind of a pause. This was manufactured by Lakeside Book Company, and I just read another book that was manufactured by them. That was published this year. And as I do with all books, like I cracked the spine, no problem. I cracked that spine, and the book just started falling apart. Anywho, that's not why we're here. Okay. So, I guess a trope or whatever for this one. Oh, shit. There's the possibility that a child is in danger in this book, too. But what I would say about this is I kind of like it when I don't know what the hell's going on in a good way. And when I keep, just like in Monday's Not Coming, I keep thinking one thing is happening, I'm not sure what's going on, and then when it is revealed or not revealed, it blows my mind. So that is a thing. I guess you would call that trope, what the hell is going on? Speaking of unreliable narrators, I do not think a child is in danger in this one. This might be the rare exception. There is a daughter, but that daughter is grown. And that is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. Again, this gave me a twist that I didn't see coming. In fact, I have no idea what that note means. Yeah, I think I know what's going on, and then all of a sudden it's revealed that I am wrong, and I love this. Come home, Vera's mother called, and Vera obeyed. In spite of their long estrangement, in spite of the memories, she's come back to the home of a serial killer. Back to face the love she had for her father and the bodies he buried there. Coming home is hard enough for Vera, and to make things worse, she and her mother aren't alone. A parasitic artist has moved into the guest house out back and is slowly stripping Vera's childhood for spare parts. He insists that he isn't the one leaving notes around the house in her father's handwriting, but who else could it possibly be? There are secrets yet undiscovered in the foundations of the notorious Crowder house. Vera must face them and find out for herself how deep the rock goes. And boy, she does. I still don't know what this note means. I can't tell you because it's a spoiler. Anyway. See, this book is falling apart. Let's see who manufactured that one. It does not say here. I did want to read the dedication to you, though. This is the story of monsters and what they do to those who love them, those who fear them, and those who are simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or, from a different perspective, those who are in the right place at the right time. Serendipity is just as cruel as it is kind. This book is dedicated to anyone who has ever loved a monster. Recommended. You don't know what's going on, you think you do, and when you find out, it's glorious. No children were in danger in this book. But the next book, not so much. The next book is kind of a paranormally, monster-y horror. What I remember best about it is the very end. Which is a trope I guess we'd call one last thing, or, but wait, there's more. That is Revelator by Daryl Gregory. In 1933, 9-year-old Stella is left in the care of her grandmother Maudie in the backwoods of Tennessee. These remote hills of the Smoky Mountains are home to dangerous secrets, and soon after she arrives, Stella wanders into a dark cavern where she encounters the family's personal god, an entity known as the Ghost Daddy. Years later, after a tragic incident that caused her to flee, Stella, now a professional bootlegger, returns for Maudie's funeral and to check on the mysterious 10-year-old girl named Sunny, whom Maudie adopted. Sunny appears innocent enough, but she is more powerful than Stella could imagine, and she's a direct link to Stella's buried past and her family's destructive faith. This is billed as Southern Gothic. I could dig it. So I guess we could call it Gothic fiction, Southern Gothic. I do love Southern horror, and children are very much in danger in this. This was just a fun read. Again, the ending clinched it for me. I enjoyed it. I don't read a lot of Southern Gothic, but I enjoyed it, so it was a little bit difficult at first, but I really enjoyed it. This one also may be horror adjacent, although I think it actually was billed as horror supernaturally. But what I loved best about White Horse by Erika T. Wurth is that I love a fucked up main character who is trying to be better, but keeps failing, but doesn't stop trying. I think sometimes that could apply to all of us. We have our weaknesses. Maybe I'm lazy, or maybe I do this too much or not enough. Maybe I don't clean the house like I should. Maybe I have stacks of books, but I'm going to keep trying to get better. I root for those kind of people. Some people are haunted in more ways than one. Heavy metal, ripped jeans, Stephen King novels, and the occasional beer at the White Horse have defined urban India Carrie James's life so far. But when her cousin Debbie finds an old family bracelet that once belonged to Carrie's mother, it inadvertently calls up both her mother's ghost and a monstrous entity, and Carrie's willful ignorance about her past is no longer sustainable. Haunted by visions of her mother, and hunted by this mysterious creature, Carrie must find out what happened to her mother all those years ago. Her father, permanently disabled in a car crash, can't help her. Her Auntie Squeaker seems to know something, but isn't eager to give it all up at once. Debbie wants to help, but her controlling husband keeps getting in the way. Carrie's journey toward a truth long denied by both her family and law enforcement forces her to confront her dysfunctional relationships, thoughts about a friend she lost in childhood, and her desire for the one thing she's always wanted but could never have. I don't remember what that is. I do know that I'm going to read this. I love this main character. This is kind of probably my first dive into urban Native American fiction, and I've continued to read more about that in that genre, but this one was the one that really is memorable for me. I wish I could cry, but I can't. I'm broken that way, just fucking broken, like a clock on the wall, stopped in time, but she rocks me and rocks me like a sleepy child, and I let her. I loved her voice. I loved my alarm's about to go off. My timer's about to go off. Anywho, I love this. So if you hear a little noise in the back that's not the radio, it's my timer going off because I had set a timer on myself and I exceeded the time. Okay, next up, this is book number 9. This is the Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. There's a child in danger. One of the things that I loved about this most is that there's a scene that reminded me a lot of like Doctor Who. And I loved Doctor Who. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I really loved it. And just a great book. Long ago, Nathan lived in a house in the country with his abusive father and has never told his family what happened there. Long ago, Maddie was a little girl making dolls in her bedroom when she saw something she shouldn't have and is trying to remember that lost trauma by making haunting sculptures. Long ago, something sinister, something hungry, walked in the tunnels and the mountains and the coal mines of rural Pennsylvania. Now, Nate and Maddie Graves are married, and they have moved back to their hometown with their son, Oliver. And now, what happened long ago is happening again, and it's happening to Oliver. He meets a strange boy who becomes his best friend, a boy with secrets of his own and a taste for dark magic. This dark magic puts them at the heart of a battle of good versus evil and a fight for the soul of the family and perhaps for all of the world. But the Graves family has a secret weapon in this battle, their love for one another. I feel like Chuck should write a sequel to this. I don't think he is going to. He says he's tried writing this book 3 times. But this kind of ends I think, with leaving me wondering, which is not a bad thing. But I do recommend it. And before I get to I'm going to call it number 10. It's really not the 10th book. But before I get to that, this has been revelatory. I did not realize that so many of the books that are my favorite are ones where children are in danger. And I'm going to have to add that to my list of things that apparently I love. I'll do that right now. So, I'm not going to say finally. I'm going to say here originally, because this was the first horror author that I really started following what they were going to... I read everything he published. Almost everything now. There are a couple books 30 some odd years later, 50 some odd years later that I have not read. But obviously, that is the king, Stephen King. I really love early Stephen King. The books that I put down, Carrie, Cujo. I reread Cujo this year and loved it. The Shining. Basically, Stephen King, the cocaine years. But two of my favorite books by him are probably two of a lot of people's favorites. That is It. This is a second copy of It. I have a hard copy that I lost the cover to. This one is falling apart. Not the fault of the binder or the manufacturer, the fault of me, because I've read this several times. If you don't know about It, I loved the remake, the movie remake that they did. I say remake, the first one was a TV special. I did not like that one as much as I liked the one that was more recent. But if you're unfamiliar with It, children are in danger in here. All the children are in danger in here. It's a small city, a place as hauntingly familiar as your own hometown. Only in Derry, the haunting is real. There were 7 teenagers when they first stumbled on the horror. Now they were grown-up men and women who had gone out into the big world to gain success and happiness, but none of them could withstand the force that drew them back to Derry and to face the nightmare without an end and the evil without a name. When I read this book, they call them teenagers. They're like 12, 13. They're kind of really more coming of age. This is a coming of age horror. It is also, there's some paranormal or supernatural. So I was the age of the kids when I read this. And this is probably the book that broke me as far as being scared. I finished it, and I was so terrified, I had to sleep with the overhead light on. I've always had to sleep with like a night light on because I don't like to wake up in the dark and not be able to get around. I slept for a long time with the overhead light on because of this book. It terrified me. And I don't remember anything ever scaring me as much. Thanks a lot, Stephen King. I know people talk about being scared. I have not found anything lately that's done it for me. The other favorite book is a genre or subgenre that's not really featured anywhere else in this stack, and that is apocalyptic fiction. I'm sorry, I'm bumping the table because this is heavy. That is The Stand. I did a reread of this, possibly, I think it might have been in 2020 or 2021. It was after the pandemic. It was not, I wasn't being a prophet or anything. But I love the original TV series, which is not available for streaming. You can find it on YouTube. And that's a shame. The new one I liked. There were some things I liked better, but the OG I've rewatched several times. So let me try not to bump the table. This is the way the world ends. With a nanosecond of computer error in a Defense Department laboratory and a million casual contacts that form the links in a chain letter of death. And here is the bleak new world of the day after, a world stripped of its institutions and emptied of 99% of its people. A world in which a handful of panicky survivors choose sides, or are chosen. A world in which good rides on the frail shoulders of the 108-year-old Mother Abigail, and the worst nightmares of evil are embodied in a man with a lethal smile and unspeakable powers, Randall Flagg, the Dark Man. So this was published in 1978. This version is a more recent publication, and it is the complete and uncut version, which I recommend. Again, this formative for me. I don't remember if I read the cut version. I almost surely would have had to, but maybe not. Let's see. This version, published 1990, I think. No, I don't know. Yeah, 1990. So this is probably the one that I read. I don't think I read the uncut version. Anywho, my timer is still going off. I'm sorry if you can hear that. I didn't think that I would... I thought I would be done before this. Anywho, this has been fun and revelatory, like I said. I did not realize that there are children in danger in The Stand too, but it's more apocalyptic, so it's not focused on a child. Didn't realize so many of these were about children in danger. I love all of these books, and I recommend all of these books. I will put links to bookshop.org for each of these. Highly recommend every one of these. Unless, of course, you don't like to read books about children in danger. One of the things that I absolutely don't like, but I realize it's sometimes necessary, particularly in horror, is unnecessary cruelty to animals. I did read a book one time where these kids attack a dog, and these kids were supposed to be the good kids, and I had to skim through that really quickly because it was overkill. It wasn't protecting themselves, it became harming the dog as opposed to self-defense. Anywho, hey, I'd love to hear what your favorite horror genres or subgenres are, or tropes are. Have you read any of these? Do you have any horror books to recommend? Anything you think will scare me? Because I'm searching and I'm not finding. That is it for me. I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. I do try to reply to every comment. Thank you and happy reading.